الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد, in our previous class we had begun discussing the issue of al-masah ala al-ha'il, al-masah ala al-ha'il, the issue of wiping on a barrier, wiping on a cover. And we have seen that this includes a number of masail, a number of issues. At the head of them, al-mashu ala al-khufayn, al-mashu ala al-khufayn, wiping on al-khufayn, which is the leather socks. Also included in this issue is al-mashu ala al-jawrabayn, wiping on the regular socks. And likewise, al-mashu ala al-jabira wa ma yulhaqu biha, and likewise wiping on the cast or the brace that is placed on a body part because of a wound and the likes, and also that which is along with that from types of bandages. And also the issue of al-mashu ala al-imama, and wiping on the turban, and also al-mashu ala al-Khimaar, wiping on the Khimaar for the woman. So all of these issues here are summarized under the title. Some of the people of knowledge, they will mention al-mashu ala al-ha'il, wiping on a barrier, and that will be between the hand that is wiping with the water and the skin of a person in that particular place. In our previous class we had begun the issue which is the asl in this particular chapter, al-mashu ala al-khufayn, and we have seen that al-khuf, it is ma yulbasu ala al-qadam yasturu al-qadama wal-ka'bayn, and is that which is worn on the foot, and it covers the foot and the ankles. وَيَكُونُ مِنْ الْجِلْدِ غَالِبًا في كلام الفقهاء, that normally the khuf would be from the hide of an animal. Likewise, and whenever this word is used like this is the general understanding that it is like a sock, a leather sock from the hide of an animal that will cover the foot. It will cover the foot, including the ankles. So we have seen a number of conditions with regards to this, with regards to jawaz al-masah, and this is what we took yesterday in our previous class. Shurut jawaz al-mashi ala al-khufayn, some of the conditions or the greatest conditions and requirements for the permissibility of wiping, for the permissibility of wiping on the khufayn, The first of them was that they should be worn only after having complete tahara. If a person, he did not have complete tahara, meaning he did not make the wudu entirely. For example, if he was upon a hadith and he had to make wudu, he must complete the wudu entirely. Al-wudu, al-tahara al-ma'iyya, that he must wash and perform the wudu entirely and finish from that, and then only after that putting on the khufayn. Now it will be allowed for him to wipe. This is the first condition. Likewise, we've seen as well that from the condition to be allowed to wipe is that the khuf, it must be from a material that is tahir, taharatu ayniha, that the khuf, it must be pure. It must be from a hide that is pure and lawful, not from a hide that is considered impure, like the hide of a pig, so on and so forth. And likewise, we have seen as well that the khuf, it must cover the portion of the foot that is an obligation to wash. And this is what the definition of the khuf is in the first place, that garment that covers the foot and the ankles. So if one of these conditions or one of these requirements is not present or more, then it's not allowed to wipe. So a person, he has to have the wudu entirely, and the wudu has to be with water. So if he did not finish the wudu properly entirely, he will not be able to wipe. Or if he had made wudu and then he only had his feet left, we've seen in the previous class, and he washed his right foot and then put one khuf on, and then he washed his left foot and put the other khuf on. He did not put them both on after having complete tahara. So the best opinion here is that it's not allowed to wipe, and this is what is safest. So before putting them on, he must finish and complete the wudu entirely. We've seen the hadith al-Mughira radiallahu anhu that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, دَعْهُمَا فَإِنِّي أَدْخَلْتُهُمَا طَاهِرَتَيْنِ, leave them, so that I can wipe on them. Leave them, because indeed I have put them on while both of my feet were upon tahara. Well, both of my feet were upon tahara. So this is the best opinion with regards to this, that a person, he will complete the wudu entirely. He will complete the wudu entirely. And likewise at the foot, it must be covered. At the foot, it must be covered. Also, so if a person, he had, for example, a khuf that was below his ankles, it didn't cover his ankles, it would not be allowed for him to wipe on that. Even if he put them on upon tahara, he may complete tahara, and it's made from the hide of a lawful animal that is considered tahir. But they're lower than the ankle. They're below the ankle. It will not be allowed to wipe on them. It will not be allowed. It will not be allowed to wipe on them. It will not be allowed to wipe on them. Also, we've seen in the previous class another important point, and that was that small holes that may be found, and after some time from wearing them and the likes like this, inshallah, this will not harm the wiping, so long as it does not become something that is major, where the khuf will not fit on the foot properly, or it becomes something that is very clear that a great part of the foot is showing, so on and so forth. So long as it's considered light normally, then inshallah this is pardoned, and there's no blame in that, and Allah knows best. So now we discuss issues the people of Nara, as they mentioned, shurutun li sihhatil mas. Now we know these conditions for the permissibility of wiping. Now there are conditions for the correctness of wiping. For the correctness of wiping, meaning if these other conditions are met, then likewise along with that have to be more conditions for that wiping to be correct. And we take two of the most important conditions, because some of the people of knowledge, they have mentioned actually a number of conditions, but they're not all agreed upon. And some of them should be observed, and some of them, Allah knows best, they should not be observed. So we summarize and discuss the ones that are most important for us to abide by, and inshallah in this manner there will be no doubts about the correctness of our tahara if we follow these points. So here we have two conditions. The first one is that the wiping should be in the proper time. So if a person, he went out of the proper time, then the wiping will not be correct, even if the previous conditions had been present, and even if it's covering his foot properly and it's lawful and it's tahir, and he put them on while he was upon tahara, so on and so forth, this will only last for a certain period of time. So it has been corrected by Imam Muslim from the hadith of Ali radiallahu anhu, that he said, جَعَلَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ ثَلَاثَةَ أَيَّامٍ لِي الْمُسَافِرُ وَيَوْمٍ وَلَيْلَ لِلْمُقِيمِ وَيَوْمٍ وَلَيْلَ لِلْمُقِيمِ. And he was asked about this issue. He was asked about the issue of wiping on the khuf, and Ali radiallahu anhu, he said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said 3 days. He said 3 days for the one who is traveling, and 1 day and 1 night for the one who was a resident. So therefore, the one who is a resident, he has 1 day and 1 night to wipe. If he goes beyond that, the wiping will not be correct. It will not be allowed for him to wipe beyond that. It will not be allowed for him to wipe beyond that. So if he puts them on and the likes like this, then he has from the particular period to count 1 full day and 1 night. 1 full day and 1 night. And then after that period is over, the opportunity to wipe is finished. You have to take off the khuf and renew the tahara and put them back on. If the period goes. Likewise for the traveler, he has 3 days. 3 days and nights. 3 days and nights. So after that period, it's not allowed for him to continue wiping. It's not allowed for him to continue wiping. Rather, he has to take off the khuf, and then renew the tahara properly, and then put them back on, and then he will have again, so long as he's still traveling, he'll have again 3 days and 3 nights. 3 days and 3 nights. So the wiping has to be in this period. It cannot be out of this period. Another condition, أَلَّا يَأْتِيَ مَا يُوجِبُ الْغُسُلِ, that he will not do anything that would require for him to make a ghusl. That he will not do anything that will require for him to make a ghusl. It's been collected by At-Tirmidhi and other than him from the hadith of Safwan ibn Asal. From the hadith of Safwan ibn Asal radiallahu anhu, that he said, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يأمرنا إذا كنا سفرا ألا ننزع خفافنا 3 أيام ولياليهن إلا من جنابه ولكن من غائط وبول ونوم. So he said radiallahu anhu that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he used to order us if we were traveling, إذا كنا سفرا ألا ننزع خفافنا, that we should not take off our khifaf. The khifaf is the plural of khuf. Al-khifaf jam'u khuf. That we should not take off the khuf. The Prophet ﷺ, he used to order us that if we were traveling, we should not take off the khuf for 3 days and 3 nights, except from al-janaba. And this is the shahid. Except from al-janaba. Except from al-janaba. But rather from al-gha'it, from gha'it wal-bawl wal-nawm. Al-gha'it wal-bawl wal-nawm. But rather only from the feces or from the urine or from sleeping. Or from the sleeping. So therefore the exception here, the Prophet ﷺ, he ordered them to not take off their khifaf while they're traveling. And this was for the case if they defecated, or if they passed urine, or if they slept, the deep sleep, the deep sleeping, that they will not take off the khifaf, or that they will make wudu and wipe on them. But he said, illa min janaba, except in the case of janaba, meaning if one of them fell into a state of janaba, at this time they will have to take them off. At this time they will have to take them off, because now the obligation to remove the major hadith is that he must make a ghusl. So a person, he's allowed to wipe on them in the period so long as he does not do anything that requires for him to make a ghusl. Because if it's an obligation to make a ghusl, it's not allowed to wipe anymore. Rather, he must take them off and he must perform the ghusl properly. So these are the conditions for the correctness of that. So if a person, he's a resident and he's wearing he's wearing the khuffain for beyond the period, beyond a day and a night, and then he wiped after that, then the tahara would not be correct, and leading to the fact that if he prayed, the salah would not be correct. So then if he remembered this, even if it happened on accident, and sometimes it may happen, especially if a person, he's accustomed to putting on the jawrab, for example, the socks at a certain time every day, and he knows that period, and then something happens and his schedule changes, and then he puts on his socks at a different time, and the period changes one day, and the likes like this, because something happened in his schedule. Maybe he will forget and have them on beyond the period, and wipe on them beyond the time that is allowed, and then pray, and then remember after that, oh subhanallah, like this. So in this time now, the wudu is incorrect, and likewise the salah. So it will be an obligation. If it was an obligatory prayer, to repeat that prayer. If it was an obligatory prayer, it will be an obligation for him to repeat that prayer. If it was a recommended prayer, it's recommended for him to repeat that prayer. The point is that the ablution, the tahara, would not be proper. The hadith will not be raised. Because he violated this particular condition and requirement, and that is that the wiping must be in the proper time. It must be in the proper time. Likewise, if he were to have janaba, if he were to, for example, sleep, he were to go to sleep, and then he had a wet dream, for example, and then he woke up. The only way he can remove the hadith is that he would have to make the ghusl. This is something that is well known. So the janaba is from the al-hadith al-akbar, and there's no way to remove that except for with the ghusl. This is the origin with regards to that. Not discussing the issue whenever the water is not found. So this is the case here. So these are the conditions with regards to the correctness. So now maybe it's crossing some of our minds. We're asking mata bidayatu ihtisab al-mudda. And when does the time for counting the day and night, for example, for the resident? When does the counting start? When does a person's day and night start? Is it whenever he makes tahara, or is it whenever he puts on the khuffain, or is it whenever he has a hadith, or is it whenever he first wipes? Which is the time that he will start counting from? So the people of knowledge, they differed in this issue, and Allah knows best. The time that it counts is after the first wiping after the hadith. Al-awwal al-masah ba'da al-hadith. And for example, if a person, he made tahara entirely, and then he put on the khuffain, and then after that he passed gas, and then he made wudu again and wiped on his khuf. At this time the period starts. Because the ruling, and Allah knows best, is coupled with wiping, not coupled with the hadith. The ruling for wiping is coupled with the masah, not coupled with the hadith. So therefore it begins at the first time of wiping, after having the hadith. So for example, if it was a person's normal affair that he would wake up at the Fajr time, and then he would then he would make wudu properly, make the tahara completely, and then put on the khuffain, or we'll say even for us today the jawrabain, and we'll see the ruling is very similar, if not exactly similar, in this issue. Then he puts on the socks, and then he prays Fajr, and then he goes to work, and then around 10:30 or 11:30 he breaks the wudu. He uses the restroom and the likes like this, and then after that he makes tahara and he wipes on his socks. He wipes on his socks at 10:30 in the morning, for example. Then he has all the way until the next day, 1 day and 1 night from that period. 1 day and 1 night from that period that's allowed for him to wipe. That it's allowed for him to wipe. Do you understand this? So for 24 hours, 1 whole day and 1 night from that period, from the first time that he wiped. So we wouldn't say from Fajr. We wouldn't say from Fajr time whenever he first put them on, or whenever he first made tahara, but rather from the first time that he wiped. He has a day and a night from the first time that he wiped after he broke the initial tahara. And Allah knows best. And Allah knows best. And with regards to the period, a number of the people of knowledge, they mention after the period is up, the tahara is invalidated likewise. The tahara is invalidated likewise. But Allah knows best, that is not the case. The period for wiping is up, but as for the tahara, it remains. As for the tahara, it remains, and Allah knows best, because there's no evidence indicating that this would invalidate the tahara. And the tahara, the hadith, was raised in the legislative manner, based upon legislated evidences. So therefore, that ruling cannot be invalidated or removed. That ruling cannot be removed except with a legislated evidence and proof. And there's no proof clearly stating that whenever the period is up, it invalidates the wudu. It invalidates the wudu. And the same thing is with regards to taking them off. The same issue. And a number of the people of knowledge, rather the majority of them, they mention that if a person, he takes off the socks, then in doing this, the wudu is invalidated. The wudu is invalidated. But Allah knows best, the wudu is not invalidated, but rather the time for wiping is invalidated. So taking off the khuffain or the jawrabain, this al-khala يكون مانعا للمسح عليهما بعد ذلك لو ألبسهما مرة ثانية. It will prohibit him. He will not be able to wipe anymore. If he took his sock off, he made wudu, put his socks on entirely properly, and he made wudu properly, and then he put his socks on, and then he broke his wudu and wiped on his feet. Then after that he took off his socks. Does taking off the socks in this circumstance break the wudu? Allah knows best, it doesn't break the wudu because of that which has preceded. There's no clear evidence stating that this is the case. And that wudu, that ablution, that hadith was removed based upon a clear evidence in the legislation. And there's no clear evidence to remove that ruling, the fact that he's upon tahara. But as for the time to wipe is over, so he will not be able to put those socks back on and then wipe on them again, and then wipe on them again. So he will only be able to wipe on them again if he now, after taking them off or taking one of them off, he remakes the tahara completely again and then puts them back on while he is upon the tahara entirely. So these are some important points. When does it begin? The first time he wipes. After that, he has 1 day and 1 night. If he's a traveler and he makes the tahara, and then he puts on the jawrabain, he puts on the khuffain or the jawrabain while he's traveling, now he has 3 days and 3 nights from the time of the first wiping. After that period, it's not allowed to wipe anymore. He will have to take them off and renew the tahara and then put them back on again for the period of wiping to return. If you were to take them off any time during that period after breaking the wudu, after having a hadith, if he takes them off, this breaks the opportunity for wiping anymore. He's not allowed to put them back on without making complete tahara again. The people of knowledge, they mention likewise with regards to wiping. What is wiped? The top of the sock is wiped. And there's a consensus that if a person, he wiped the bottom only, it would not be correct. It would not be correct. If a person, he wiped the bottom only, it would not be correct. So what is to be wiped is the top. And it's been narrated from Ali radiallahu anhu أنه رأى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يمسح على ظاهر خفيه, on the top of the khuffain, on the top of the two socks, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Likewise, it has been collected by Abu Dawood, also from the hadith of Ali radiallahu anhu, that he says, and with regards to this topic, لو كان الدين بالرأي لكان أسفل الخف أولى بالمسح من أعلاه وقد رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يمسح على ظاهر خفيه على ظاهر خفيه. He said radiallahu anhu, great wisdom. He said if the religion was based upon opinions, لو كان الدين بالرأي, if the religion was based upon opinions, لكان أسفل الخف أولى بالمسح من أعلاه. The bottom of the sock has more right to be wiped than the top of the sock. If the religion was based upon opinions and what people think and the likes like this, then with regards to the khuf and wiping on it, wiping the bottom takes precedence, is more rightful than wiping the top. Why does he say that? It only makes sense because the bottom is the one that's going to be more dirty. It's going to be getting dirty. It's going to be exposed to more dirt and the likes like this. So therefore, it makes more sense to wipe the bottom. If you're going to wipe something off, any impurification, you're going to wipe off the dirt and the likes like this that might be on the bottom more so than the top. So this is the case. If one were to think about this and implement his own intelligence in these affairs, then this one, it clearly makes sense from this aspect. But he says, يعني لو كان الدين برأي, if the deen was by opinion and by logic, but it's not. He's trying to declare it, but it's not though. He said, ولكني رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يمسح على ظاهر خفيه. But I saw the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم wiping on the top of his two khuf. On the top of his two khuf. So this is the case. It's not by the opinions. It's not by the intelligence. It's not by the intellect. Rather, it's by following. It's by al-ittiba'. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's the one that received revelation. We wipe because he wiped, and he's the one who clarified that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is the means for that. The people of knowledge, many of them, they mention likewise, al-wajibu an yamsaha akthar zahir al-khufayn, that he should wipe the majority of the top of the khuf. He shouldn't just wipe a little portion, like his toe, for example, or just a small portion. Rather, he should wipe the majority of that. And they base this upon the understanding of wiping the head. Because in wiping the head, we're not required to wipe the whole head, yani every last hair. Rather, a person, he puts his in the manner that has proceeded from the front to the back and to the front. So no doubt there are possibly some of the hairs on the head that are not being wiped. So it's sufficient to wipe the whole head, yani meaning the whole majority of the head. So whenever he puts his hand from the front of his head to the back of his head to his neck and then back to the front, in general this is wiping almost the entire head. But it could not be said for sure that it's the entire head or that all of the hair were wiped entirely. So here the ruling is for the majority. So likewise, since the head is something that is wiped, then also the khuf is going to take the same ruling since it's something that is wiped also. So you have to wipe the majority of it. So sometimes the fuqaha, they'll mention evidences directly from the Quran or directly from the Sunnah. And other times they'll mention along with that evidences that are considered ta'liliyah. Yani they'll have wisdom behind that. And this wisdom is based upon observing the evidences and examining them and looking at them. And sometimes whenever there's no clear text, not in the Quran nor in the Sunnah, for example in this case, then they'll use the ta'lil as an evidence. The ta'lil is looking into the wisdom and the reason behind things. So this is the case here. So since the head, the majority of it is wiped, and it would not suffice to wipe some of it, then likewise the majority of the khuf should be wiped, and it would not suffice to wipe some of it, and Allah knows best. So if a person, he wiped the majority of the khuf, then there's no doubt that he had performed the obligation, and that his wudu would be proper. It would be proper. So after this we have another question, how to wipe the khufayn. What is the methodology? And will a person, for example, wipe the right one with the right and the left one with the left, or the left one with the right and the right one with the left, or we wipe them both all at one time, and the likes like this. This is also something that people of knowledge, they have differed with regards to the details of. But as for in general, there's no difference of opinion that so long as he wiped both of them, then it would be considered correct, and he would remove the hadith. So long as they're wiped, the majority of them, in the manner that has preceded, then the hadith will be removed. Some of the best positions with regards to this is to wipe both of them at the same time. Yani that a person, he'll take his hands, yani with slightly, the fuqaha, they mention slightly moving his fingers, spreading his fingers apart, and then wiping from the toes to the shin. Yani both at the same time. both at the same time. Yani this is also from the ijtihad. Yani because in the hadith of Mughira radiallahu anhu, he said that after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Da'huma fa inni adkhaltuhuma tahiratayn," leave them, and leave my feet, and leave the khuffayn, because I put my feet in them while they're upon tahara. And then he says radiallahu anhu, فَمَسَحَ عَلَيْهِمَا, فَمَسَحَ, then he wiped on them. And so some of the people of not, as I mentioned, فَمَسَحَ عَلَيْهِمَا, yani they understood from that all at one time. All at one time. So to do them both at one time. Others, as I mentioned, that rather what is closer to understanding the text is that he wiped the right one first and then the left one first. The right one first and the left one first. And this is also going back to comparing the feet to other body parts. And so whenever you wash the feet, how do you wash them? The right one first and the left one. So looking from this aspect, whenever you wipe them from the right first and the left also. But others, they mentioned, but rather whenever you're wiping, whenever you wipe the head, you do it all at one time. You do it all at one time, and you wipe the ears likewise all at one time. So you wipe the head and then you do the ears all at one time. And the ears are both on the right and the left. You don't do the right ear and then the left ear, you do the head and then the ears at one time. So then they're saying also like this, then the feet, they're done at one time. They're considered one body part. You wipe them both at one time. And the others, they say, no, the feet are actually, whenever they're washed, you do the right one first and the left one. So therefore you wipe the right one first and the left one. And all of these affairs here, they go back to al-ijtihad. Al-ijtihad. So if a person, he has the ability to look into the statements that the scholars have with regards to this ijtihad and find one that he feels to be closest to the truth and follow that, and he's seeking to please Allah Azza wa Jal, then this is good and allowed for him. And if he's not able to do that, then he will follow one of the positions of the reliable people of knowledge, and as has preceded, these are from the best of them. So either he'll wipe them both at the same time, or he'll wipe the right one first with his right hand and the left one next with his left hand, and Allah knows best. And if he did it other than that, contrary to that, then it's all good and correct. Then it's all good and correct, and Allah knows best. And Allah knows best. So we have now the issue the issue of the one who wears more than one sock, and likewise the issue of taking off the sock. So we've seen the issue of taking off the sock. If a person, he makes wudu entirety, then he puts on the sock, and he doesn't break his wudu, and then he takes off the sock, and he takes off this, for example, he puts on he makes wudu, he puts on the sock, he puts on both socks, and then he sees that one of his socks is inside out. Can he take it off and put it back on? And in this state, right, he just made wudu, he's upon tahara completely, he just washed his feet and everything. And now he's putting on his socks. He put both of his socks on. He looks down, and one of his socks is inside out. Can he take it off and put it back on, or does he have to take them both off and go make wudu again, and then put them back on?
He didn't start the masjid.
The mess didn't start. There's no hadith yet, so he's still upon the same tahara. He's still upon the same tahara. So now, if he took it off and put it back on, it doesn't harm him, because he's wearing them and he never broke the wudu. He never broke the wudu. We understand it? We understand this? So now if we see this, then the same ruling goes with wearing two. The same ruling goes with wearing two. So if he put on one sock, he made wudu entirety, and then he put on one pair of socks. And after that, immediately, he put on another pair of socks. He put on another pair of socks. Is this allowed?
Yes, sir.
It's allowed? It's the same ruling. It's the same. He put on one pair of socks. Immediately after that, he put on another pair of socks. It's cold outside, or he wants to have some cushion in the lights like this. Or he put on one pair of socks, and then after that, he put shoes on. He put shoes on. Now, what is the ruling? The same ruling. Covers the ankle. So then he can wipe on the one on top. So if it fits the conditions that preceded, whatever he's wearing, whether it's a khuf, or whether it's a jawrab, or whether it's the hidha, if he puts them on when he has tahara. But the point is now about the wiping issue. So we go back to the origin, the one who, the first one, and he wearing two socks. So if he put on two socks at one time, and then later on he broke his wudu, and then he wiped on the top socks, and then he wiped on the top socks, and then later on after that he took off the top socks. He got hot in the same day. Like for example, at dhuhr time, before dhuhr time, he put on two socks in the morning time, and then by dhuhr time he had to make wudu again. So when he made wudu at dhuhr time, he wiped on his socks while he's wearing two. So he wiped on the top pair. And then by asr time, it's hot. He gets hot, so he takes off the top pair. And now it's time to make wudu for Asr. Can he wipe on the bottom pair?
No.
Yes.
Can he wipe on the bottom pair?
Yes, he can.
We go back to the first issue. He's wearing one pair of socks. If he's wearing one pair of socks, and he puts them on at Fajr time. And then by Dhuhr time, he breaks his wudu, so now he wipes on those socks. And then by Asr time, he takes them off. So now can he put them back on and wipe? No, he can't wipe. So it's the same ruling. He can't wipe again. The wiping is attached. The ruling of wiping is for the one that he wiped on first. It's for the one that he wiped on first. So if the socks that are wiped on are taken off, then the opportunity for wiping is gone. So if he had put on 2 pairs of socks in the morning time, and then at Dhuhr time he wiped on the top pair, and then by Asr time he took off the top pair, the ruling of wiping was related to the top pair. So it's not allowed to wipe now on the bottom pair. Rather, now if he wants to wipe again, he has to take them all off. Make the tahar again, and then put the socks back on. So you can't put on a number of layers and then wipe on one and get rid of another one, wipe on another one and get rid of another one. He can't keep that. The first time, whatever he wipes on the first time, the ruling of wiping is related to that. So even on another case, in the morning time, he made wudu entirely, then he put on his socks. And then by Dhuhr time, he wiped on his socks at Dhuhr time. After Dhuhr, he goes out, it's cold, he puts on another socks. He puts on another pair of socks. And then at Asr time, can he wipe on the top pair? No. He can't wipe on the top pair. He has to take off the top pair and wipe on the bottom. He already wiped on the bottom, so the ruling for wiping for this period is related to the one that he wiped first. So he's already wiped on the bottom ones. At Dhuhr time, he wiped, before he prayed Dhuhr, he made wudu and wiped on the bottom pair of socks. He has wudu now. And then later on, he put on another pair of socks on top of those. And then at Asr time, he wants to make wudu again. He cannot wipe on the ones on top. The majority of the scholars will not allow that, because the ruling of wiping is already related to the socks that he put on in the beginning. So he broke his wudu and then he wiped on those socks. So therefore, he cannot put socks on top of that and then wipe on those. So the ruling of wiping is related to the item that is wiped first. We understand this? So for example, also if a person, he put on his socks, he made wudu entirely, then he put on his socks, and then he put on boots. To go to work. Can he wipe on his boots? Later on, at Dhuhr time, can he wipe on his boots? He put on his boots he put on his socks while he has complete tahara. And then he put on his boots while he has complete tahara before making any hadith. Can he wipe on his boots? Yes, he can wipe on his boots. So we'll say, for example, that Dhuhr time he wipes on his boots. And then by Asr time he gets off work, he comes to the masjid. When he comes in the masjid, can he wear his boots in the masjid? No, he has to take them off. So can he go and wipe on his socks now? No, he cannot go and wipe on his socks now, because the wiping was related to the boots, not to the socks. He can't wipe on something and then take them off. You can't wipe on something and then take them off and then continue to wipe. So if he wiped on his boots, then the ruling of wiping is related to his boots. So if he takes off his boots, the opportunity to wipe on now is gone. So the opportunity to wipe now is gone. So he's not able to wear his boots and wipe on his boots, and then later on take off his boots and wipe on his socks. And then maybe he had 2 pairs, then later on take off those socks and wipe on the other side. He can't keep doing this. Rather, it's going to be related to the first thing that he wipes on. The ruling is related to the first thing he wipes on. This is whenever he's wearing more than one item on his foot, more than one sock or shoe on his foot. We understand this? So this is the case. In these examples here with regards to the shoes, and what is intended are shoes that are covering the ankles. If he has shoes that are below the ankles, but he has socks on, is it allowed? Or even if, like he has tennis shoes, for example. He has socks above his ankles and tennis shoes on below his ankles. Can he wipe on his shoes?
No.
He has socks on above his ankles, but he's wearing sandals. Can he wipe on them? Can he wipe on them?
No.
The people of Nad, as they mentioned here, that he can, but the ruling will be on both of them. So he's wiping on both of them now. He's wiping on the sandal and the sock at the same time. So now the ruling of wiping is on both of them. Now the ruling of what, if he has sandals on or if he has shoes on below his ankle, but on top of that he has the khuf, or on top of that he has the jawrab, that's proper, then he wipes on the shoe and on part of the sock, or on the sandal and on part of the sock. So now the ruling of wiping is on both of them. So if he takes one of them off, what happens? He can't wipe anymore. If he takes the shoes off, he can't wipe anymore. Huh? You understand that? The ruling is related to both of them. The ruling is related to both of them. So these are some important issues with regards to wiping. These are some important issues with regards to wiping. Do we need to go over this again? It's clear? Or make the examples again. The examples that we mentioned before is after having made the hadith. The point is after making the hadith. If a person, he puts something on his foot, he puts socks on his foot, and then he puts shoes on his foot, and he doesn't break his hadith, he doesn't have a hadith, then he can take off his shoes as he likes. Or even if a person, for example, he puts on his socks, and then he puts on his shoes to come to the masjid, and then whenever he comes to the masjid, he breaks his wudu. So then whenever he comes inside of the masjid, he takes off his shoes. And then he goes and makes wudu. And then he wipes on his socks. This is normal. This is the first time. So the point is the first wiping. The first wiping after the hadith. Whatever you wipe on, the ruling is related to that. If he puts on his shoes upon complete tahara, and then he has a hadith, and he wipes on his shoes, now the ruling is related to his shoes. If he has complete tahara, he puts on 2 socks, and then he has a hadith, and then he makes wudu and he wipes on the top sock, the ruling is related to the top sock. So the one that is wiped on is like the very first one that he put on. The ruling is related to this one. That's why we began in the beginning, the very first situation. He only put on 1 pair of socks. And then if he takes them off, what happens? He can't wipe anymore. He can't wipe anymore, right? So this is the case. If the same situation. If he has 2 socks on, but he wiped on the top, he took those top ones off, he can't wipe anymore. He had the socks and shoes on, he wiped on the shoes, and he takes his shoes off, he can't wipe anymore. We understand that?
Yeah.
You with me? So if he didn't break the hadith, he can put his socks on, put his shoes on, come to the masjid, take his shoes off, right? But the point is, whenever he breaks the hadith, after that, when he makes wudu and he wipes, what does he wipe on? Whatever he wipes on, the ruling of wiping is related to that. If that comes off, then the opportunity to wipe is over. Is clear now? So after this we have the issue of al-mas' ala al-jawrabain. So basically the ruling is the same. The jawrabain, they're like the khufain. They're like al-jawrabain wa khufan, they're basically the same. The difference is the material that they're made out of. So the khuf is made from the hide of an animal normally. This is the understanding as has proceeded of the fuqaha in this topic. And as for the jawrab, then this is made from wool or from cotton and the likes of these materials. So with regards to this issue, it has been collected by Abu Dawood and other than him, rahimahullah, from the hadith of Thawban, radiyallahu anhu, that he said, بعث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم سرية فأمرهم أن يمسحوا على الأصائب والتساخين. That the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sent out a military brigade that would go out at night time, and he would appoint individuals to go out, a small number, to go out and do reconnaissance and the likes like this, and to take care of military issues. And he ordered them that they should wipe على الأصائب والتساخين. And the people of knowledge, they mentioned the asaib, a number of them, they said this is the amaim, the turbans. Others, they have mentioned that rather the asaib is anything that is wrapped around the head. It could be a turban, or likewise it could be bandages and the likes like this, or anything that a person, he would use it to wrap it around his head, is considered, is included here in the asaib. And the tasakhin, the people of knowledge, a number of them mentioned that this is the khifaf. This is in reference to the khifaf. Others, they mention a more general meaning, and they said that the sakhin is any type of garment that is used to wrap around the foot, to cover the foot, to keep them warm. So from this aspect, some of the people of knowledge, they have said this includes the jawrab. This includes the jawrab. This includes the sock. And likewise, in reality, the jawrab is a khuf. They're the same thing. And it has been reported authentically from Anas radiallahu anhu that he was seen making wudu and he wiped on the jawrab. He wiped on the jawrabain. And then he was asked about that and he said, إِنَّهُمَا خُفَانِ وَلَكِنَّهُمَا مِنْ سُوف. He said, indeed, they're the khuf. They're the khuf, but they're just from wool. They're just from wool. So the people of knowledge, they mentioned Anas, Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu, he's from the Arab, and he knows the Arabic, he knows Al-Arabiya, and he understood that this jawrab is a khuf. So therefore, this is the case. So it has the same ruling. Not to mention that Ibn al-Mundhir rahimahullah, he mentioned that this issue has been narrated from 9 different companions. 9 different companions has been narrated that they wiped on the socks, on the regular socks, on the socks, that's called the jawrab. And he numbered them. And Ibn Qudamah, he mentioned this in Al-Mughni. And it's been narrated from Ali and from Ammar and Ibn Mas'ud and Anas and Ibn Umar and Bara and Bilal and Ibn Abi Awfa and Sahl ibn Sa'd. All 9 of them narrated that they wiped on the socks, on the jawrabain. That they wiped on the jawrabain. And likewise, it has from the qiyas as well. They're very similar in the same thing, in the same purpose, and the same reason: to cover the foot, to protect the foot, to keep the foot warm. The only difference is the material that they're made out of. So therefore, they have the same rulings and the same conditions, and everything that has preceded the people of knowledge. They mentioned the same affairs with regards to them. So that which has preceded with regards to the khuf is the same ruling with regards to the regular socks, and Allah knows best. After this, we have the issue, the people of knowledge, they mention of al-mas' ala al-imama. Al-mas'hu ala al-imama, wiping on the turban. The turban is a garment that is wrapped around the head. We wouldn't say it's like the shimag or the gutra, like it's common to wear today, but rather it's similar to the shimag or the gutra, but they'll wrap it around the head and wraps, and it will be tied down to the head. And a number of the people of knowledge, they make the condition for it to be muhannaka, meaning that it's a type of turban that goes around the head and then it comes around the chin. Or that it would be that du'ab, or one that has a tail behind it, and the likes like this. So the majority of the people of knowledge, they find it to not be permissible to wipe on the imam in the first place. The majority of the scholars. But it's from the mufradat of the madhab al-Hanabila. The Hanabila, they find that it's permissible. So along with that, they make the conditions that it has to be tied down and be tight. And they say that muhannaka, the one that goes under the hanak, the one that goes under the chin, and it's tied down. It's hard to get it off. Or it has a tail. If a person were to take it off, maybe it would become unraveled real easy, and it would be difficult to deal with. So this is what many of the people of knowledge mention. Although some of them, they mention that this is not necessarily a condition. But Allah knows best. It should be something that's difficult. If it's easy to take it off, then what's the problem with just taking it off and wiping it? If there's no mashaqqa, if there's no hardship, then a person, he shouldn't jeopardize this affair. If he can just easily remove what's on his head, and if the imama, and wipe without any trouble, and the likes like this, then he should do that, and that is better, and Allah knows best. But if it was difficult for him to remove, and he wiped on that, inshallah, it will be considered correct. And this is from that which has preceded from the hadith of Thuban, amarahum an yamsahu ala al-asa'ib, al-amaim, from some of the understanding of that. And likewise, it has been narrated, collected by Imam Muslim and narrated by Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah radiyallahu anhu, that he said, وَوَضَعَ النَّبِيُّ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ فَمَسَحَ بِنَاسِيَتِهِ وَعَلَى الْإِمَامِ وَالْخُفَيْنِ. That the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made wudu and he wiped on his forehead and his turban and his two khufayn. So here we see in this narration in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's wearing the turban, but his forehead is showing. So he wiped on both of them. On both of them. And this is the case. If a person is going to do this, he had the turban on, and then he's going, and his forehead is showing, he'll wipe on the forehead and the turban, and the turban at the same time. And in other wordings, likewise, it has come, and the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam masaha ala al-imama, that he wiped on the turban only. So the people of knowledge, they mentioned this is the case if the forehead is not showing. It's covering his whole head entirely and nothing is showing except for the imama, then he'll wipe on that. Then he will wipe on that only, and it's not a condition to wipe on the forehead, and Allah knows best. Again, this is with regards to the imama specifically, the turban that is wrapped around the head. And even more specific, and Allah knows best, the one that's difficult to take off. The one that's difficult to take off. So not the shimag, or not the taqiyah, or the kufi, and the likes like this. This is something you just lift off your head and put it back on. It's not a problem. It's not difficult at all. So this will not be permissible for him to wipe on top of that. Rather, that which is mentioned is the imama, and this is the case. Likewise, the people of Nad, as I mentioned, along with that as well, that they compare the imama here to the khufayn, from the fact that, of the conditions that have preceded, that it has to be worn upon tahara, and the likes like this, and also it has the period of time similar to the khufayn, and Allah knows best this is correct, because that which gathers these two affairs together is that these are both yani mashru' li haja. Why will a person wipe on the socks? Because it's legislated and allowed for a need. So likewise, it's allowed to wipe on the turban for a need. So therefore, they're very similar in this issue here. So therefore, they have the same ruling. So he will not be able to wipe unless he put it on upon tahara, and then he has the same time limit. Likewise, 1 day and 1 night, and Allah knows best. Again, if it's easy for him to take it off, then this is better for him just to take it off and make the wiping properly on the head, in order to avoid any differences of opinion or any doubts that he may have about the correctness of the tahara, and Allah knows best. Also in Sahih Muslim, from the hadith of Bilal radiallahu anhu, he says, Inna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam masaha ala al-khufayni wal-khimar. That the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he wiped on the two khuf and the khimar. The people of Nad, as I mentioned, what the khimar means here is the imama. So this is another evidence to emphasize that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he wiped on the khuf and he wiped on the khimar. He wiped on the imama. So therefore, for this reason, the Hanabila, they mentioned that it's lawful and allowed, and it's from the Sunnah and permissible, because of these evidences that are clear. But they made those conditions normally because in those days, the type of imama that was well known is the one that would be wrapped around the chin, or the one that had the tail and the lights like this, or the one that's difficult to remove. So because of that difficulty, they found it to be permissible, and Allah knows best. This is a strong position. The point now is that the imama is called khimar. The imama is called khimar. So likewise, the Hanabila as well, rahimahumullah, they mentioned qiyas, an analogy, likewise with regards to the woman and her khimar, because she wears the khimar, she wears the head covering likewise. So they mentioned that the khimar that is wrapped around her chin as well, that is tied down tight, and it's difficult for her to remove, also it's allowed for her to wipe on that. Again, this is the position of the Hanabila. The rest of the madhahib and the majority of the scholars, they do not find this to be permissible. So again, it's something that a person, he will not take lightly. If they find that this is the situation and circumstance and they have that need, then they will do that bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. But if there's no need, if it's easy for the woman to take it off and to remove her khimar enough for her to wipe on her head, then she would do that. And there will be no doubts about her wudu and her tahara, and likewise no doubts about her salat. So it's not something that somebody would take lightly and just do freely without any reason. So again, the woman, she has the khimar, and the imam is called khimar. So the men and the women, they have very similar rulings throughout the legislation. And the people of Nad, as they mentioned, that many times the woman, maybe she's in greater need than the man to wipe on the khimar. Maybe she's in greater need than the man. You need to wipe on the khimar because maybe she's possibly around individuals that she does not want to see her hair, or so on and so forth. So at this time she will take advantage of this ruling. But again, if it's easy just to wipe properly, whether it's a male or a female, this is better. And this is what the majority of the people of knowledge, they have found, and Allah knows best. You had a question?
You said it's better to take it off. Somebody keeps it on, it's covering the forehead. You're washing his face, does he have to wipe?
If somebody's wearing a hat, or a woman, she has the khimar on and it's covering part of the forehead, and they make wudu. Like for example, he's got his taqiyah. This is called a taqiyah. He has a taqiyah on covering half of his forehead, almost down to his eyebrows, for example, and he makes wudu like that. He washes his face up to his hat. What's the ruling for his wudu? It's not correct. The same thing if a person he has a thawb on, or she has a garment on, jilbab with tight sleeves. and you can't get them up all above the elbow, and you just wipe what's available. Is that correct? No, it's not correct. No, it's not correct. Those body parts that have preceded in the wudu, they all have to be washed. They all have to be washed. Again, we shouldn't take this lightly. This is going to determine the correctness of the prayer or not. And did we fulfill the obligation of salat or not? And there's great threats with regards to not performing the wudu properly. So again, no, you have to pull washing the face, they're going to have to pull the khimar back, or they're going to have to pull the imama back, or they're going to have to pull whatever is, if there's anything there that's stopping the water from reaching that body part, it has to be removed in order for the water to reach the body part entirely and for the wudu to be correct. You good? جزاكم الله خيرا. هذا وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.